geese. Geese everywhere. It's a geese fest. Look at all those geese. What? Someone just grabbed my butt. Was it you? Did you goose me? More geese. Hello, geese. Hello, geese. Ooh, he's hissing. I'm just taking your picture. I'm not bothering you. What the hey, MegaPodTastic's Crazy Joe on a beautiful Monday. It's quite nice. I actually thought it was going to be a rainy day today, but it is not, and I'm happy about that. I wanted to take some time to talk about Solo, a Star Wars story, which has been playing in theaters for a little over a week. And I have seen it 3 times. Really enjoyed it. It's very, very good. My personal review of the movie, as I came out, I said to my wife, not the best Star Wars movie I've ever seen, but possibly the most rewatchable. It's very standalone, and I think the fact that it is so standalone is going to make it more rewatchable than most of the movies, because the other movies are so intrinsically part of an ongoing story, an ongoing narrative, that, like, when you watch Empire Strikes Back, Empire Strikes Back, which, by the way, I think is the best Star Wars movie ever made, it ends on a cliffhanger ending. It ends with, Han and Carbonite and taken away, and we got to rescue him, and, there's loose threads hanging, so you kind of feel compelled to watch Return of the Jedi because you didn't get a complete story. So you can't just, you can, but I never just sit down and watch that movie and walk away and say, that was great. I always want to follow it up with the next chapter in the saga. The Last Jedi just came out a few months ago. Same thing. Obviously, we don't have the next chapter yet, but it ends very much on a cliffhanger. I don't want to give spoilers for The Last Jedi in case some of you haven't seen it yet, because obviously it's only been on Blu-ray a short period of time. Some people may not have gotten to it yet. But it's the middle chapter of a trilogy, as was Empire. So there's loose ends dangling. As much as I love the movie, you don't get a lot of the closure that you would from a standalone film. Now, Solo, on the other hand, is the most standalone Star Wars movie ever made. Now, Rogue One was called a standalone movie, but Rogue One kind of leads you directly into Episode 4. So, again, it's like right where Rogue One stops is where Episode 4 starts. So you kind of feel like, I can continue with this right on to the next part. Solo, very much its own thing, and I think that is going to make it the most rewatchable. Solo may be the Star Wars movie in the future years that I go back to and revisit the most often. Now, that doesn't mean it's my favorite, doesn't mean I think it's the best, but it means that I think it is so standalone that if you have time to watch one movie and one movie only, that might be the one to go to. That could change as more standalone movies come out, like Boba Fett's been announced, but we'll see. So I really, really enjoyed it. It's not doing so well at the box office. I mean, it's not doing badly. It's certainly not a failure. Some people have put it out there as a failure. It's really only a failure comparatively speaking. If you look at what other Star Wars movies have done, it's not doing what you expect from a Star Wars movie. And there's a lot of theories as to why. Some people think it's people who hated The Last Jedi who are boycotting Star Wars. I think that's kind of ridiculous. Why in the world, if you don't like a movie that was written and directed by Rian Johnson, would your go-to response be to boycott a film by Ron Howard? Ron Howard had nothing to do with the movie you didn't like. Nothing. He didn't write it. He didn't direct it. So it's misplaced anger. Also, Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote Empire, often considered the best Star Wars movie, wrote Solo. So if your problem is with The Last Jedi, you're placing your anger in the wrong basket. It's not logical to boycott Solo over feelings on The Last Jedi. I compare it to when Star Trek Into Darkness came out. I hated Star Trek Into Darkness. I really hated it. But it was written by Damon Lindelof, Roberto Orci, and Alex Kurtzman, and directed by J.J. Abrams. So a couple years pass, Star Trek Beyond comes out, and there were people saying, I'm not seeing Star Trek Beyond, I hated Into Darkness. And it's like, yeah, but Star Trek Beyond is not Into Darkness. It's its own thing. And it's written by Simon Pegg, who did not write the previous one. He was in it, but he didn't write it. And it's directed by Justin Lin, who has never directed a Star Trek movie, so you really don't know what he's going to bring to the table. And the end result, Star Trek Beyond, best Star Trek movie in 20 years. Not since Star Trek First Contact in 1996 has there been a Star Trek movie that good. So, different writer, different director, bring a whole new vision to a project. The only thing that's the same is the universe in which the stories take place. So, I don't get that. But even then, the people boycotting Solo because they didn't like The Last Jedi, they're not enough. They're not enough to affect the box office. They could have had a minor impact, but there has to be more to it than that. Because you got the people who aren't hardcore fans who don't follow that stuff. For example, my wife told me she would have had no idea that there were people boycotting Solo if I hadn't told her, because it's one of those things that's so, you have to be traveling in the right circles to even hear about that. Average mainstream public doesn't know that stuff. They just want to see a good movie. And they don't care. They don't care that the fans have some kind of axe to grind. They're just going to go see a movie or not go see a movie. So why didn't they go see it? Why didn't average guy on the street go see it? Well, the other speculation we hear is that maybe it was just too soon. It's been 5 months between Star Wars movies. That may not have been enough gap of time. Last Jedi literally just came out on Blu-ray. They may have just been still catching up with that one, not ready for a new one yet. That could be true. The question comes out then, well, how come Marvel is so successful? Marvel could put out Thor in November, Black Panther in February, and Infinity War in May, and all three of them do gangbuster business. I heard it explained, well, Marvel is a little different than Star Wars in that each film is very much its own thing. Like, Black Panther came out in February, only a few months after Thor, but it wasn't a sequel to Thor. Thor wasn't even in it. It was like, oh yes, these are part of the same franchise, but they're not very similar. They're very, very different. That could be, but the same thing is true with Star Wars, isn't it? I mean, The Last Jedi is a movie about Jedis and the Force, and Rey and Kylo Ren and their Force users, and it's not Solo. Solo, the Force, I don't even think they mentioned the words the Force anywhere in that entire movie. It's a movie about smugglers. It's a movie about the underworld. It's a movie about criminals. It's a heist film. It's a heist caper, Solo. So again, same universe, but a very, very different movie than Force Awakens. So I'd say that's actually the same as Thor and Black Panther. Yeah, they're the same universe, but the movies themselves couldn't be more different. But does the public know that? The average person on the street may not realize the kind of movie Solo is. They may just say, they know the Star Wars brand name and they go, oh, you know, the Force, Jedi, lightsabers, I just saw that. I don't know. I don't have the answers. All I know is Solo is a great movie. And it's kind of a shame it's not doing so well, because I would actually really enjoy seeing new adventures of young Han Solo every couple of years. I think Alden Ehrenreich, who plays young Han, is phenomenal in the part. He really does an amazing job of capturing Han Solo without imitating Harrison Ford. But even though he's not imitating Harrison Ford, he does capture some of Harrison Ford's little facial tics and mannerisms. So there's just a slight sprinkle of imitating Harrison Ford, but it's not an impression. A lot of people, there's an impressionist, a guy who was on YouTube. I don't know, maybe he's an actor. There was a guy on YouTube named Anthony Ingruber who did a Harrison Ford impression, and the guy remarkably looks a lot like Harrison Ford. I mean, they bear a strong resemblance, and this guy does a killer impression of him. And a lot of people thought, oh, he should be Han Solo. He's got Harrison Ford down perfect. But I think that would have been an awful decision. Just really, really awful, because he's not an actor. I mean, he has acted. He was in a movie called The Age of Adeline where he played a young Harrison Ford. But I didn't see that movie. It's my understanding he had a tiny, tiny role. It was like a flashback where he had a couple of lines. Something like that, he's passable. But when you're the lead in a movie, you got to give a performance. You actually have to act. You can't do an impression for 2 hours. That's not going to fly. People aren't going to be able to suspend disbelief and actually believe they're watching the character. They're just going to be sitting there going, wow, that guy does a really good Harrison Ford impression. It would be like if when Johnny Carson stepped down as host of The Tonight Show, instead of giving it to another host, they gave it to Rich Little and said, hey, Rich Little, you host The Tonight Show as Johnny Carson. You do a good Johnny Carson impression. It wouldn't have worked. Nobody would have watched that. Of course, I'm not a huge Jay Leno fan, so I don't know. Maybe that would have been better. But Jay Leno was #1 in the ratings for years, so I didn't care for him. A lot of people did. To each their own. That's why there's 3 channels, 3 networks at the time when Carson stepped down. Now, obviously, there's a million options, but I'm talking at that time. So, yeah, Alden Reich's good. I'd like to see more of him. I'd like to see more of Donald Glover. And I definitely... Now we're going to get into spoiler territory. I've kept it very spoiler-free. We're going to get into spoilers now. So, you have been warned. Hit the stop button if you haven't seen Solo. If you don't want to be spoiled, stop now. Maul. I warned you. I warned you. If you didn't listen, the villain was Maul. Not the villain of the movie, but he's the secret reveal that he was kind of behind it all. The Crimson... What's it called? Crimson Dawn criminal organization. I saw the movie 3 times. You'd think I'd remember. Crimson Dusk, something like that. But they reveal that the head of this criminal organization was Darth Maul, or just Maul now. He's not a Sith Lord anymore. And that was really cool. Obviously, anyone who knows their Star Wars canon and continuity and watches all the animated series knows that in this time period, Maul is still alive. So that's not a surprise to a Star Wars fan who knows the continuity. Might be a bit of a surprise to a mainstream fan who hasn't watched the animated series, because the last they saw Darth Maul, he was getting split in half in The Phantom Menace and falling down a pit. They probably thought, hey, that guy's dead. But if you watch the cartoons, you know he's not dead. And the idea of Maul and Kira teaming up as the head of this Crimson Dawn? I want to say Crimson Dawn. I hope I'm right. There's stories to be told there, and I want to see those stories. And I'd like to see Solo 2, another Star Wars story, or whatever they call it. Maybe they can go the Indiana Jones route and call it Han Solo and the blank. You know, give each one a subtitled Han, you know, like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, you know. Han Solo and the... I don't know. But if we don't get a sequel to Solo, I still hope they'll continue that storyline of Red Dawn and Maul in some other form. Perhaps Maul versus Vader. That would be a good movie, wouldn't it? The old apprentice has to fight the current Sith apprentice, the one he was dismissed for. I'd pay to see Maul versus Vader, but there's stories to be told. I'd like to see them. I don't care how they tell them. I just want them. So, there you go. I guess I've been rambling, but those are my thoughts on Solo. Great movie. See it. Check it out. And keep on wearing those pajamas.